Hi everybody, you're watching The Culture Cave. I'm Gabriella White, editor of The Culture Cave, and this is the ongoing World Literature Review series. I'm specifically focusing on this book for this mini-series, namely Searching for the Dharma, Finding Salvation, Buddhist Pilgrimage in Time and Space, an absolutely fascinating volume by the Lumbini Institute. And at the moment I'm reviewing one of the latter chapters of the book, namely the pilgrimage to Mount Kaba de Carpo, a metaphor for Bardo. Now Bardo, of course, is the intermediary state between life and reality as we know it, and death or the afterlife or whatever that means to you. In Buddhism it's very much a continuation and a potential reincarnation after the 49 days of purification upon passing away or passing on in the real Buddhist sense, passing on to something else, transitioning. So the whole idea is that we are all slowly dying and that we are all transitioning to something. Change is the only constant. In the previous episode it's so lovely that the wind chimes are actually just ringing there as I start this video. The wind is actually quite a symbolic part of the journey of pilgrimage in terms of extreme weather conditions and the suffering and the frightening experiences that can occur on pilgrimage, especially the higher up these mountains you get. The suffering and the extremities become more inevitable, really, which is very symbolic of death itself. That, you know, the turbulent journey of death, in order to experience peace and essentially enlightenment and bliss beyond that. It's almost like there's an inevitability of this barrier that you have to get through, this pain barrier, which again is very symbolic of life itself and various waves of that we go through, whether we like it or not. So the chapter, I previously described some of the frightening experiences and accounts of pilgrims, and this book is very much from a Tibetan perspective. It also goes into pilgrimages in other places such as India, all interconnected of course. One of the key locations that is actually mentioned is let me see, there is a key mountain that is mentioned. I'll come back onto that one, and the pronunciation of it as well. But one thing I wanted to mention is that death is very much regarded as a liberation. So death, upon hearing the instructions during the intermediate state between death and rebirth, is a cycle of both peaceful and wrathful deities. And it's also a revealer of treasures, both along the way and at the end, which again is symbolic of pilgrimage in terms of the material things that we can collect if we wish to do so, the material things, but essentially it's all about letting those go as well at the end of the journey. And essentially it's also practicing for death, so that's what pilgrimage is about as well. Also there are references to the stones said to be loaded with pilgrims' sins, and these can be seen hanging from trees. So that is one way to offload the negative energies and all of those kinds of things. Now, the chapter also talks about, yes, this is what I wanted to talk about, the Tsari, which is another difficult pilgrimage on the border between India and Tibet. And one circumambulation is sufficient to be purified from sins. A large number of pilgrims hope to do so, as many as 13, known as Skor Ra in one lifetime, a number that appears with great frequency in Tibetan non-Buddhist cosmology, history and religion. But whatever the final number, it must always be an odd number. Now there's a very special reason for this, that it needs to be an odd number in the tradition. And the reason is that for pilgrims, even numbers represent processes that have come to an end and no longer bear fruit. So in contrast, odd numbers are incomplete. They represent an incompletion in a positive sense, because there is full potential for continuation to produce positive effects. So it's almost a positive interpretation of unfinished business, if you will, in this regard. And the numbers 3, 9 and above all 13 are actually lucky numbers in the Tibetan tradition. And along the way, pilgrims perform various actions associated with death and the afterlife. And this raises the issue of the relation between pilgrimage and the afterlife, as well as that of the concepts Tibetans have about landscape. One key thing that the chapter mentions, which is really beautiful, is that Tibetans have an approach to death and the afterlife in terms of connecting with a physical and finding a physical expression in the landscape. This proposes an interpretation of some of the features of the landscape as metaphors of the bardo. So it's all about finding meaning in the material around us, in order to get to the ephemeral stage of bardo and passing on. Being aware of all of these concepts as well gives us a sense of peace. You know, as with any religion or spiritual path, you know, the more knowledge we attain, the more we study these things, the more we embark on these pilgrimages, the more we can make peace with ourselves, our surroundings, and also making peace with the unknown. Essentially, we can try to learn as much as we can, and shed the spotlight on the future and the unknown. But essentially, ironically, it's about the present moment and making peace with that at all times, as much as we possibly can, and to also embrace and accept that suffering is a part of that journey. So I've really enjoyed this specific chapter of book. It also references, you know, nature as symbolism for a crashing reality en route to death. So again, letting go of the material around us, and also pilgrimages as concrete ways around sacred mountains. The ultimate aim to succeed is to basically assure an easier afterlife. So thank you for watching.